Well, we're back in Douglas, Kansas, and on the way back I picked up a copy of the Hutchinson News. I think in the old days it used to be the Hutchinson Herald. Put the title on it now as Hutchinson News, and that's Hutchinson, Kansas. Well known in the Yuma area because it's where the junior colleges go for the national basketball competition. Yeah. Don't know who writes their editorials. This one, as is quite common, doesn't have a byline on it, but you know, it's one of the editors, I think, of the Hutchinson News. Title: Torture. The latest information about how in contemporary times the United States government came to use waterboarding and other techniques that are clearly torture reveals enduring lessons and truths about human nature. One is that even good people's judgment can be impaired by the situation, and a rationalization to rely on the advice of other people who might not be using the prism of morality in rendering such advice. It goes on to say, and I'm just reading pretty much straight out what's here. It appears that many Bush administration officials relied on bad advice and didn't truly understand waterboarding and other interrogatory proceedings techniques. They also might have been so scared of another terrorist attack that they were persuaded irrationally to use such tactics with captured terrorist suspects. Goes on to say, then there always is the danger of immorality in the room, commanding too much influence. In the case of some key Bush administration officials, it is too generous to let them off the hook simply for misunderstanding or being scared. Now I'm ad-libbing, not reading. Pretty unusual to find something this straightforward criticizing anything in the Bush administration. This is Kansas. This is right-wing territory. This is Bush territory. I commend whoever the editorial writer is for having the personal integrity to write this column. Now back to the column. One of those, obviously, is Vice President Dick Cheney, who even now continues to defend the use of torture. Cheney's argument, basically, is that the ends justify the means. After the release last week of the memos detailing the brutal interrogative techniques, Cheney said the Obama administration should release documents that show the success of the torture. Cheney just doesn't get it. One can only imagine all the possible ways to torture a human being to extract information, but effectiveness does not make it right. And continuing, the final lesson is that history repeats itself even when you least expect it. It turns out that authorization for waterboarding, which is simulated drowning, and other interrogative techniques used by the CIA after the 9/11 attacks had their origins in a military training program. But the training wasn't for the U.S. to use them, but to educate American soldiers about torture methods used by communists in the Korean War, so Americans would know what to expect. Moreover, waterboarding in particular was prosecuted by the United States in the war crimes trials after World War II. It long has been popular with governments where tyrants are in the government, dating as far back as the Spanish Inquisition. A genocide museum in Cambodia even has on display a waterboard used under Pol Pot. Waterboarding is clearly torture. There should be no further argument about it. And whether or not it works is an absurd argument. Of course it works, although reportedly not always. But that's not the point. The point is that if Americans are good people, we don't do torture. While the inclination might be to let it go and not continue to investigate, lay blame, and potentially prosecute those responsible for using torture in the war on terror, that could be a disservice to history. Maybe the seriousness of our intelligence tactics needs to be fully exploited so that for at least a generation or two, we might not be so inclined to repeat these misjudgments. End of article. Again, it makes me very sad, now not having anything to do with the article, but with my own personal beliefs. Very sad that the Army that I served with pride and that I would gladly see my children, grandchildren, and now my great-grandchildren die for, would sink to the level of denying the Geneva Convention and to using torture. More on that from a Time magazine article later.